had to answer why Udaipur. First meeting of the GST Council. I was not in Delhi and I was in Udaipur. All right, gentlemen, let's get back to the conversation. So it seems very clear from what the finance minister said and from his body language, if I could interpret, that he's reasonably confident, as were a lot of the state ministers we just heard, that we'll probably see the final drafts approved of the SGST as well as the IGST laws on the 4th and 5th of March. One more meeting for the formal harmonization of goods. And then we should be ready to roll from the 1st of July. So I'll come back to my basic question. And Hari, let me start with you this time. How prepared is India Inc.? And, at least in this interim transition period, the finance minister also mentioned certain time exemptions in terms of return filing, etc. Are we going to see any disruptions in terms of how companies are handling inputs and inventory?
So the large and medium-sized companies are fairly prepared now. So I don't think there is a concern. At least for the last couple of months, most of them are well geared to handle this transition if it happens on July 1st. And it's very clear now July 1st seems to be the date. As far as the smaller players are concerned, that's where there could be some degree of concern because they need to really gear up. And I think there will be more outreach that will happen both by the large companies to the ecosystem of smaller dealers and distributors. And similarly, the government will also do that. And I was happy to hear the finance minister say that one of the issues that came up was how do they ease the transition by giving exemptions in case of those smaller people who may not be able to file those returns on time. It could equally apply to the larger guys. So that's a good, I would say, thought that came out in the finance minister's press conference. Also, what I could clearly gather that the areas which came up as far as the legal committee vetting or re-vetting is concerned were the agricultural definitions, the concept of what will be the treatment of works contract, the whole exemptions on transitions, and basically the composition scheme. So there aren't too many vexed issues. I was also happy to hear him say that the IGST was cleared. So all those jurisdictional issues, 12 nautical miles, states power to levy, all those seem to be out of the way. So fundamentally, these are the 5-6 points which have to be taken up on 4th and 5th. And I think they'll once they clear that, they'll be well geared to bring it in the second half of the parliament and pass those bills. And equally, the states will pass those bills. So I feel the industry will now really need to buckle down. The larger and medium companies will basically be ready. It's the smaller people who needs to be really geared up, and they need to understand at least the basics of do's and don'ts, because it's critically important they understand, because otherwise the whole value chain will not really get the efficiency of GST and remove whatever little cascading that may be there going forward. So in my view, I would say a good meeting, and I agree with you, positive body language, and I think it's very much on that the bills will be in the Parliament, at least IGST and CGST bills in the second half of the budget session.
Sachin, your thoughts on the same, and again, the same simple question, that if this indeed becomes reality from the 1st of July, then purely from understanding, the corporate P&L standpoint, are we going to see any lumpiness? Are we going to see any significant changes? How do you expect the rollout to really play through when it comes to hard numbers on the P&L?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the preparedness of the entire industry is concerned, 85% of the total population which is coming under GST is either under small scale, medium scale industries. If you look at the large scale industries, most of them, as Hari said, is either ready or started working on this on the GST readiness. Coming to the service sector, it is a different perspective altogether. Many of the service industries, even though large one, are not completely ready. They are started discussion thinking that this may not happen immediately, or they may not be very familiar with the concept of the supply, etc., other than service tax and other levy they have been used to. So if you look at the medium and small scale industries are concerned, it's a mixed bag. Some of them started understanding. One good thing is that the major, the large-scale industries are taking initiative to get all those small-scale industries and the second line and third line of the supply chain, bring them together and make them aware of what is the requirement of GST, etc., which is a welcome step. And this is because unless and until the suppliers and vendors are not, or the customers are not up to the speed and not complying with the GST, even those who are ready to embrace GST also will suffer, because their credit may suffer. They may not be in a position to derive the complete value of GST. From a P&L standpoint, I think it is all depend upon what is the rate which is going to be finally decided by this rate fixation committee. As per the principle of the fixation of the rate, the government said that it would be more aligned towards those slabs, existing slab vis-a-vis the proposed slabs. So whatever is between 5 to 9 will be rolled out to 5, and then 9 to 14, maybe up to 12. So we have to wait and see that who is perhaps benefited, who is not benefited, and the main block there to assess that whether it actually going to improve their P&L is the anti-profiteering provision. If the anti-profiteering provision is going to be implemented strictly, then it will be status quo, because whatever benefit you are getting out of GST has to be passed on to the final consumer. However controversial it is, then perhaps it will be status quo. So in all, if you look at, I think things are moving in the right direction. I think the GST is on track. And I think those who are now still not decided about getting ready for GST, I think it is too late for them if they are not doing it immediately.
Okay, Mani, your thoughts on this? I mean, the large belief and assumption is that there should not be too many deviations from the current effective rate of taxation, depending on whichever sector you're talking about. But do you think that come, the July, August, September quarter and the subsequent quarters, are we going to see a lot of variation in the quarterly earnings report cards?
Yeah, I think we are going to see a lot of differences. And what I would say also in response to your earlier question on what is going to be the P&L impact, this is one area, and I mean, I'm not stating this in order to be critical at all, but the rate fixation exercise seems to be given some kind of a backroom treatment.
It's almost rushed up. It's very quick, last minute, do it just in the nick of time.
Exactly. I would say that if business has to get prepared, irrespective of whether they are big businesses or small businesses, they need to know the rates under which they are going to be taxed. And in GST, what has been decided, and these rates, I mean, which we have now, which is a 5, 12, 18 and 28, were fixed up, if you recollect, in the first week of November.
Right.
And in the first week of November, what we were told was that a committee of secretaries would go into it and they would come out with their findings by 15th of November. So we are now in the middle of February, and if you still don't know the rates at which a particular business is going to be taxed, because just bear in mind that it's very good to know that there are going to be 4 rate slabs. It's very good to know that the legislation is going to be passed, and we are making very good progress. But for a business to get really prepared and to know the P&L impact, are they going to be in a situation where they are going to get a lot of input tax credits? Are they going to be in a situation where their vendors are going to be out of pocket? Do they pass on these credits to their customers or not? I would say that these are very, very fundamental issues which all businesses, large and small businesses, are facing. So possibly what would be very nice on the part of the government to do is to expedite the rate fixation exercise and go ahead and announce the rates on a priority without putting that on some kind of a side track or a back track. We also have to keep in mind, I'm sure you are aware, that the rate on services has not yet been announced. And the rates that were decided in early part of November were in respect of goods. So are we going to continue with the same taxation of services, where maybe we'll move all the services from 15 to 18? Are we going to have 4 different rates of services?
Sure.
I think that has to be decided sooner than later.
You know, my colleague Timsi has just alerted us to a pretty important piece of news. She's learning from sources that all of these bills, the IGST, CGST, they will be presented or brought in Parliament in the form of money bills. Now, we don't have a political expert on the panel. I'm sure there would be some reactions to that. But gentlemen, very quickly, you know, maybe a 15-second thought on this. The fact that the government really wants to push through the agenda will probably introduce them as money bills. Are you expecting some perhaps political heat on this, Sachin?
Well, I think it was already decided that this will be brought in as a money bill, and therefore there is no requirement of it going to the Rajya Sabha. And this was pretty clear at the time when the constitutional amendment was passed. And I think that is fair and square because most of the issues between the state and central are sorted out. So, and I don't think that, it need to change the status and go to Rajya Sabha for that matter. So therefore, I would imagine that presenting this as a money bill could be the best thing to do because it will cut down the time taken for passing of the bill and consequently getting a clarity in the mind of the taxpayers.
Okay.
So it is indeed a welcome step from that perspective.
Okay, and Hari, closing thoughts from you as well. How do you see things? Are we all set for the goods and services tax to finally become a reality in this country come July 1?
Yes, I'm pretty optimistic about July 1, and it was not a surprise it's going to be a money bill. I think that was something that was stated. And with the money bill, they have the current government has the majority in the Lok Sabha. It will definitely go to the Rajya Sabha, but it's for a period in which it has to pass or approve, or else it will be deemed to be approved. So money bill was always anticipated, and I believe we are on track for July 1st.
All right, gentlemen, good to have you on to this discussion. And as we wrap up, let's actually get you some more commentary that we got after today's GST Council meeting. State Finance Ministers talking to my colleague Tim C. Jaipuria. Here's Abhimanyu Singh Sindhu, the Finance Minister of Haryana.